She screamed at the top of her lungs, "Arrest her right now!" And those two men in fake uniforms actually grabbed my wife's arm. My wife, 8 months pregnant, stumbled back in shock as one of them shoved a bogus badge in my face. "This is HOA business, sir." "Step aside." I couldn't believe what I was seeing. These weren't real cops. Their shirts didn't even match. Their patches were peeling off, and their squad car was nothing more than a black SUV with dollar store stickers. But still, they had the guts to touch my wife on my own driveway. Karen stood behind them like some queen, holding up a stack of papers that looked like she had printed them at home. "These are official HOA violations," she barked. "You people are done here. This house is no longer yours." She actually smirked as my wife clutched her belly, shaking, begging them to stop. My blood boiled, but I stayed still, because if I moved too fast, it was going to end badly for them. Then one of the fake cops shoved my wife harder, and before I could even step forward, his fist came up. He punched her right there in front of me, right on my own front porch. She fell to her knees, gasping for air. Karen laughed and shouted, "That's what you get for ignoring HOA rules." I swear that laugh still echoes in my head. For a second, I almost lost control, but instead I leaned down to my wife and whispered, "Hold on. They don't know who they just touched." My fists clenched, my pulse slowed, because years of training kicked in. They thought I was just some ordinary homeowner. What they didn't know was that I'd spent 12 years as a Navy SEAL, trained to drop armed men in seconds. And this time it wasn't war, it was personal. "Touch her again," I said calmly, "and see what happens." But they didn't listen. One of them raised his arm to strike again, and that was the last mistake he ever made. The man's fist barely left his side before I moved. My hand snapped up, blocked his punch midair, and in the same motion I twisted his wrist back until he screamed. He dropped to the ground, rolling in pain, clutching his arm. The second guy froze for a moment, like his brain couldn't process what had just happened. Then he reached for something on his belt that looked like pepper spray. But before he could even aim, I stepped in, grabbed his vest, and slammed him against the hood of their fake SUV. The sound echoed down the street. Karen shrieked, "Stop! Stop! You're assaulting officers!" She was waving her fake HOA papers like they were a shield, but her voice cracked when she saw the patches, ripping off their uniforms and the cheap toy handcuffs spilling from their bag. The neighbors started peeking out from their windows, pulling out phones, recording everything. Karen's perfect little show was falling apart, and she knew it. My wife, still on the ground, holding her stomach, whispered, "Call real cops. Now!" She wasn't scared anymore. She was furious. She knew this wasn't just harassment anymore. It was a crime. I kept one hand pressing the second guy against the SUV, pinning him like a rag doll. And with my other hand, I pulled out my phone. "You wanted police, Karen?" I said, staring straight at her. "Let's get the real ones." Her smirk vanished, but she still tried to bluff. "Go ahead, they'll believe me." "They always do." Her fake confidence shook, because even she realized the cameras catching this would destroy her lies. The neighbors whispered, "Those aren't real cops. Look at their badges. Look at his training." Then, just as I hit call, Karen made her boldest move yet. She rushed forward, snatched my phone out of my hand, and threw it onto the driveway, smashing it to pieces. "No evidence!" she screamed, red in the face. That was her plan all along, wipe out proof before the real authorities showed up. But what she didn't know was that I had already wired my house, with full surveillance cameras, streaming every second of this to a secure backup. Her attempt to erase the truth had just sealed her fate. Karen's face turned red when she saw me smirk after she smashed my phone. She thought she had won. But she didn't know every angle of my driveway, porch, and yard was under 24/7 surveillance. The moment she realized the neighbors were still recording too, her voice cracked. "Stop filming! This is private HOA business," she screamed, running toward one of the neighbors' lawns. But instead of backing off, more phones came out. People were whispering, "She's finished." This time she went too far. The man I had pinned down groaned, trying to wriggle free, but I pressed his arm harder against the SUV. "Don't move," I said coldly. The other one was still curled on the ground, cradling his wrist. Neither of them looked like lawmen anymore. They looked like cornered thugs. My wife struggled to her feet, her hand gripping the porch rail for balance. You hit a pregnant woman, she spat out, her voice shaking with anger. You're going to prison for this. That's when the real twist came. Karen, desperate, pulled out her phone and shouted into it, "Officer down! Officer down! Send backup right now." She was calling fake reinforcements. I could hear someone on the other end, some voice pretending to be dispatch. She had built this whole web of lies deeper than I ever imagined. The neighbors gasped. Some even stepped back, scared that more fake cops might show up. But I didn't flinch. "Let them come," I muttered. Inside, I was already calculating. If more of her little actors showed up, they'd walk right into a live crime scene being filmed from every angle. Karen kept pacing, ranting like she was still in control. "You're finished here. You're a violent man, and I'll make sure the whole neighborhood knows it. Your wife assaulted HOA officers." She pointed at my wife like some kind of dictator, spitting venom with every word. My wife's hands trembled, but her eyes locked on Karen with a fire I hadn't seen before. Then the wail of real sirens echoed in the distance. Karen froze. The look on her face said it all. She knew it wasn't her fake backup this time. This was the real sheriff's department. And she had no idea the deputies pulling up were men I had trained with years ago. I leaned closer to her, calm but firm, and whispered the words that made her knees shake. "Karen, you just called the wrong cops." The cruisers screeched to a stop in front of my house, lights bouncing off every window on the block. Real deputies stepped out, hands on their holsters, scanning the scene. The neighbors swarmed closer, phones high, whispering, "Finally, it's over." Karen rushed toward them, waving her crumpled fake papers like they were holy documents. "Officers! Arrest him! He attacked my HOA security team! He's dangerous!" Her voice cracked, desperate, but she still tried to sound authoritative. The deputies didn't even look at me first. They looked at the two men in the fake uniforms, their badges hanging sideways, their belts stuffed with plastic cuffs, one of them still moaning on the ground. The lead deputy, a tall man with a shaved head, squinted at them, then looked at me. Recognition lit up his eyes. "No way, Seal Parker?" I gave a small nod. "Been a while, Sergeant." Karen froze like someone had ripped the ground out from under her. The deputy's face hardened and his voice boomed across the street. "Drop the act. You two, on the ground, now!" The fake cops hesitated, but one barked, "We're with HOA enforcement," before he was shoved face first onto the pavement, cuffed with real steel. The second one was yanked up off the SUV, screaming in pain. Karen still tried to fight. "This is a mistake. I was protecting the community. He's lying." But then the deputy pointed at my porch camera, the neighbors' phones, and the smashed remains of my device. "Lady, we already have enough evidence to put you away for years. Impersonating officers, assault, harassment, and calling in fake emergencies? You're done." My wife stepped forward, her voice steady despite the bruise on her arm. "She had them punch me." And she laughed while it happened. That one sentence silenced the whole street. The deputies didn't hesitate. They turned to Karen, twisted her arms behind her back, and cuffed her. She shrieked, kicking at the ground. "You can't do this to me. I run this neighborhood." I looked her dead in the eye as they dragged her to the cruiser. "No, Karen. You just ruined your life in front of the whole neighborhood." The neighbors clapped. Actual cheers broke out. Some shouted, "About time!" Others, "Justice!" My wife leaned into me, her voice soft but firm. "We're safe now." I kissed her forehead and whispered, "I didn't fight for this country to let a fraud run us out of our own home." And as the cruiser door slammed on Karen's screams, I knew one thing for sure. The entire block would never forget the night. The HOA queen tried to play cop and got taken down by the real ones.